Okay, so thank you. Yeah, it is really nice to be able to come together on this Gita Jayanti to discuss Bhagavad Gita, its importance, its message, and an understanding of the concepts behind this work. But let's start with indicating an invocation to offer glorification to the devotees who have brought us this book. Om Jnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Mano Bhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostate Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Namo Mahavadanyaya Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namne Gaura Tushe Namaha Vanchakalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya eva cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So in this particular presentation, the way I wanted to share what is inside the Bhagavad Gita is to first describe the concepts that are present and to provide a framework to look at the Bhagavad Gita from an overall perspective. But then really the heart of the presentation, I wanted to focus, and even though it is the heart, it will probably get about 10 minutes at the end. I wanted to focus on the kind of attitude that would enable one to really imbibe the message of the Bhagavad Gita and to apply this understanding deeply in one's own life. It is that attitude actually that without that attitude, the concepts tend to remain quite theoretical. But to first start with the Bhagavad Gita from a framework perspective, the Bhagavad Gita, of course, it was a conversation between Krishna and Arjuna more than 5,000 years ago. And it came at a time Arjuna was in possibly the worst crisis of his life. He was, on the one hand, compelled by his duty to fight against his own relatives who were in the wrong. His cousins, his uncles, his grandparents, people who were like fathers to him. Everybody he had known his whole life, everybody with whom he had grown up and matured as a person, they were all standing on the battlefield before him on the opposing side. And of course, he knew that many of his most dear relatives and friends, etc., were on his side also. And a world war, which is what the Mahabharata really culminated in, and the standing in which the Bhagavad Gita was spoken, that world war was such that Arjuna knew very few people were going to survive this particular war. In a particular conversation, Abhishek mentioned some 570 odd million people were going to die in that battlefield. And even though Arjuna knew that as a Kshatriya, it was his duty to uphold what was right, and it was his duty to fight against those who had improperly cheated, stolen, etc., and insulted his wife, insulted and taken away things that rightfully belonged to the Pandavas, even though he knew that it was his duty to fight. Still, when confronted with the situation of potentially being the cause of the death of 570 odd million people, he faltered, particularly when amongst those millions of people who were going to be killed were individuals like Bhishma, Drona, Kripa, many of his other relatives who were likely to be killed or were potentially going to be killed in that battle. When life forces us to a situation where we can neither nor can we alter the situation, we are forced to kind of go through, and no alternative that we choose appears to be painless. It is a painful situation. There is only really one way to deal with that situation, and that is to transcend it. As an example, if somebody really, for example, wants to buy a house and it becomes very difficult with their particular state of finance to buy a house, and that desire is incredibly strong, it's difficult for them to live under their present circumstances. They want to buy a house, want a better living arrangement, but their finances mean they can't. The only alternative there is really learn to transcend that situation. It doesn't mean that one easily escapes, as example, in drinking alcohol. Rather, one's consciousness is forced to look at that situation, or consciousness to look at that situation in such a way that you learn to see the particular walls that Krishna has placed in one's life and the doors that Krishna is opening up. The Bhagavad Gita really provides an understanding to see those doors in our life and to acquire the strength to walk through it. A lot of what I'm speaking of course, devotees and individuals face in their life. It could be simple thing, not getting the particular prasadam we want in a particular day, or one's relationship with one's spouse may not be as one wants, or one's children may not be so very obedient, or there's some difficulty at work, or there has been a death in the family. At the time of COVID, there are several things that are upset. It could be one's job, it could be one's living arrangements, it could be that one had planned to go and leave, it could be that one is away from relatives and friends at the time of some of whom may be in India. But each of the situations, it puts us in a position where we don't have a means to alter the situation necessarily using our intelligence, our money, our connections, and in those that particular state of refined consciousness, acquiring the strength of both character, acquiring the strength of will to go through that situation, learning to see Krishna's hand in that particular scenario. That is the essence of the teachings of the Bhagavad Gita. And the Bhagavad Gita was therefore a conversation spoken by Krishna to Arjuna. Prabhupada says that the conversation took roughly about 45 minutes on the battlefield of Kurukshetra. And of course, it took place right in the center field of both armies. Some individuals ask, how is it that both armies were they just stopped? They were about to fight. Everything was settled. They were just about to fight. How is it that the war could be stopped for 45 minutes? Well, one answer is that Arjuna was a very important person in the battle, and both sides knew it. So if something was happening with him, people wanted to wait to see what would happen. But the other answer of Krishna holds of like many planets, what to speak of holding two armies apart. But in either case, Krishna had positioned Arjuna right in the middle, right at the start of the battle, when everybody was paying the most attention. Because the Bhagavad Gita is the centerpiece of the entire Mahabharata. Practically all of the politics, all of the love stories, all of the histories, all of the moral lessons in the entirety of the Mahabharata were culminating in this final jewel that indicated a conversation between Krishna and Arjuna. And right when all readers, all listeners, and everybody actually present on the battlefield had the maximum focus and attention, at that point, the Lord and Arjuna had this particular conversation, and the message of the Gita was revealed to the world. Prabhupada says that Krishna and Arjuna had this conversation right in the middle of the entire battlefield. And what this means is that the Gita is actually an open message for everybody, for those who care to listen and for those who are willing to apply it. But it's not exclusively meant for a particular class of men like brahmanas or reserved for just individuals, particular individuals. It's meant for everybody. And the Bhagavad Gita as an open conversation on the battlefield indicates that. But the other message is why Krishna chose Arjuna as being an important and particular recipient on that particular day. Well, Krishna answers this question in 4.3. He says, Sa evayam maya yogo prokta puratana bhakto sime sakha cheti rahasyam hi etaduttamam. He says, because you are my devotee and a friend, you are in a relationship with me, and you will not take this understanding to be something spoken out of my ego. You will not misinterpret it or use it just in a particular way that suits you. You will take the message in its entirety. I'm entrusting you with the most confidential, most confidential knowledge, and I'm giving this to you openly. And when you only share that which is really deeply confidential to the person you trust. Krishna was that kind of an individual, somebody Krishna could open his heart out to and trust. So Krishna said, you are my devotee and my friend, and you are the proper recipient of this knowledge. So take this knowledge and apply it. There's another explanation given for why Arjuna was qualified, and that's because of his personal qualities. If you note in the first chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna showed his foresight. He wasn't just thinking of immediate gain. He was not thinking, okay, I feel like taking revenge, I'm fight now. That was not his mentality. His mentality was to think about what the future consequences of his actions would be. He thought that he would acquire sin. He thought that many dynasties would be disrupted. He thought that civilization or the population would be disturbed. He thought that irreligion would arise when the fabric of society, when the leaders of society were all removed or killed. He was contemplating the sinful reaction that he himself would acquire as part of, and as an instrumental part of causing the deaths of more than 570 odd million people. He was thoughtful. He was thinking about future happiness, not just immediate gain. The other important point was that Arjuna was genuinely willing to change and modify his life for better outcomes. And the examples of this are when Arjuna says, I don't really need happiness, neither do I want happiness in heaven if it comes at the cost of killing my superiors. Because what kind of happiness is that? I'm willing rather to live by begging. Begging means you have to show a lot of tolerance. You have to show an ability to deal with the ups and downs of life. Because someday people will give you something, some days people will spit at you, either literally or verbally. But to deal with the reversals in life and to yet be people is the quality of somebody who's a beggar. And Arjuna was willing to live that kind of life, even after tasting kingly opulence and control and power. But it showed that he was not particularly attached to his position if it meant there was something better for himself, for others, and for society in general. These qualities Krishna had. It was those qualities which are expressed through the first chapter of the Bhagavad Gita that Krishna really took and saw in Arjuna. Here is an individual who is genuinely qualified. Or more precisely, say Krishna Krishna already knew these qualities because Arjuna is Krishna's eternal associate. But manifesting Arjuna's qualities in this way to the world, Krishna showed us why Arjuna was pretty qualified to receive the message of the Gita. And the topic I was going to discuss at the end of the class, it has come out in some way now. But the message is this, that when one genuinely has this mentality of reflection, one is not just impulsive in one's day-to-day activities. One does not look at life from a superficial, rather, one is willing to go deeper. One is willing to look at situations and ask the question, why is this happening to me? Is there a reason behind this? What am I supposed to do? I need help. I need direction. If one is willing to look below the surface of situations and life and of the events that one encounters, and one is willing to ask tough questions, and one is willing to make the required changes in order to achieve better outcomes, that sense of reflection, that sense of ability to want to transform oneself internally, rather than choosing to blame others and situations and becoming depressed and just squandering one's life in that way. If one has that deeper aspect to one's character and one's life, then one becomes a very, very ideal recipient for the message of the Gita. And this is an instruction both for us personally and for those to whom we may share the message of the Gita. One sees an individual who has genuinely that ability to reflect on their position in life, who has that ability to ask the question, ask questions like why, or what am I supposed to do, or how am I supposed to do it, and there's a sincerity behind their inquiry, then that person is a very, very ripe recipient for this knowledge. The other part of the qualification required is associated with that sense of reflection, a real eagerness to want to listen, to absorb and hear. There are some people who are reflective, but some people who are very eager to just kind of think along their own manner of thinking. They reflect deeply, they take knowledge as it is required, and they form their own solution. Such an individual is perhaps can hear the Gita and they will make some use of it, but they will not be able to make complete use of that knowledge. Rather, if someone has that reflection and at the same time, one has that element of faith in the person reciting the Bhagavad Gita or passing the knowledge to them, or even a sense that this could be something more than what I can think myself. That sense of respect for the Gita, that sense of surrender, actually, is the other key qualification required. So therefore, two things: a sense of reflection, being able to go deeper, and two, that sense of respect and surrender to the person that one is listening to. And Arjuna had both qualities. When we go to this, of course, the first chapter of Gita, Arjuna has shown his own sense of reflection. But in the second chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna offers him an out. He says, when Arjuna says in 2:7 that I'm now your disciple, a soul surrendered unto you, please instruct me, then Krishna's implicit statement, which Arjuna answers in 2:8, Krishna's implicit question is, you don't need to become my disciple. You just fight. If you win, you get earth, you get heaven. What does it matter? But Arjuna is very clear that he doesn't just want a superficial solution. Rather, he's really wanting to hear. It's not just what is on his mind that is important. He's genuinely wanting to hear. He has respect for Krishna's words, and he's really willing to apply what Krishna is saying. I can find no means to drive away this drying up my senses. I will not be able to dispel it even if I win a prosperous, unrivaled kingdom on earth with sovereignty like the demigod. It is after Arjuna spoke these words, I don't have a solution of my own. I'm willing to accept a solution that is not just my thought, but is somebody else's, your thought, whom I respect. That attitude meant that then Krishna thought, okay, now I can speak. And from 2:10, when Krishna smilingly, in Prahasan Iva, with a like smiling, he began to give his instructions. And Krishna was sorry because he thought, here's somebody who was like a friend, and now he's entering the mood of like a disciple. It was a curious change. It's almost like, imagine one has a son and one is dealing with that son on very friendly terms, almost equal terms at a particular point in time. And then suddenly the son says, no, I want to sit and listen to you. And it causes a smile. It's humorous. Krishna was wanting to smile, but at the same time, the conversation was serious. So Krishna restricted his smile and began to speak with gravity. Now, the Bhagavad Gita itself, devotees know, has 700 verses and 18 chapters. The 700 verses of the Gita originally were just in a 45-minute conversation. In the Mahabharata, it appears that the chapters are divided into 18. And that's how devotees, and that's how Thank you, Prabhu. Hare Krishna, I'm bugged out there for some time. But I think the last thing I said before the screen froze was speaking now, going from the qualification to hear and understand the Bhagavad Gita to describing the Bhagavad Gita itself. Now, the devotees know that the Bhagavad Gita has 700 verses and 18 chapters. Originally in the Mahabharata, the Bhagavad Gita, which was just a conversation. So in that sense, in the conversation between Krishna and Arjuna, Krishna wasn't saying chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3. That's not how the Bhagavad Gita was originally spoken. But Srila Vyasadeva in the Mahabharata appears to have divided the Bhagavad Gita into 18 chapters. But it was Yamunacharya, the great Acharya of the Sri Vaishnava line, who has split the Bhagavad Gita into 3 chapters, 1 through to 6, 7 through to 12, 13 through to 18. And he has split it in this way because each of these sections carries with it a distinct message. Yes, the messages are related, but there is a distinction between the focus of the first 6 chapters, the focus of the middle 6 chapters, and the focus of the last 6 chapters. In chapters 1 through to 6, the focus of the conversation is to help somebody who is in this world understanding that they need to go deeper and review what they understood of life, understood of themselves, is to go deeper and then to practice living in the world with that deeper understanding of themselves and the world around them. Let me give you an example. Suppose, for instance, I, as a family man, I have a child. If tomorrow my child passes away, I enter a state of acute distress, and every plan that I have, it is thrown into disruption. The happy I foresaw all of us having together as a family, it is significantly disrupted. And in that situation, the content of the first 6 chapters of the Bhagavad Gita acts to first center consciousness and understanding. Look, you think that it is your child passed away. No, that is not completely true. Your child was a spirit soul who has been transiting across several lifetimes and has come temporarily under your care. Now, this soul, in order to continue to evolve as a spirit soul on their journey towards the Lord, has left your care and has gone somewhere else. Now, the apparent external reason may be whatever it may be. It may be disease, it may be an accident, it may be something else. But in either case, under those circumstances, the spirit soul has moved on. Do not think that the body that you are looking at is just everything. No, you too are a spirit soul. And as a spirit soul, you also have a journey to follow. And it is that your entire purpose was just to experience the situation that you're in. Rather, the experience that you have in this particular life are intended to help you as a spirit soul grow and evolve towards your real identity as a spirit soul. So the focus of the first 6 chapters of the Bhagavad Gita are, 1, to instruct us in our real position as being a spirit soul, to help us understand that our position in this material world and the experiences that we have here are really part of a journey to come to a state where we are able to awaken our actual spiritual identity as a spirit soul. And it is to tell us that our position in this world is only existent until we gather the relevant experience we need in order to understand that I don't need everything that I have here. Yes, I've experienced families. I've experienced going out on holiday here, there, and somewhere else. I have tasted different kinds of foods. But in actual fact, I, as a spirit soul, I'm not connected to the experiences that I have here. But if I can use those experiences to go to understand who I am, for instance, if in the course of my work or some sport that I'm playing, I'm able to go deeper into the particular qualities that I possess. And this is often an experience people have when they're playing professional sport or when they're doing something. Thank you, Prabhuji. So, sorry, I think I dropped out there. In the course of playing professional sport, course of doing something that I've personally, I come to understand, no, actually, I'm not very patient under these circumstances. I don't have a lot of contact. I don't have a lot of focus. One begins under those situations to understand a little bit deeper. And those experiences help us go deep who we are and how we function as a person. Similarly, the topics in the first 6 chapters of Bhagavad Gita emphasize if we can use every world, not in and of itself, but to understand that I, as a spirit soul, don't need this any longer to be happy, to come to that level of understanding, because my qualities, what actually makes me happy, is something completely different. Is the purpose of the first Gita. It is to understand oneself as a spirit soul, completely distinguished from matter. The way that happens is best expressed in the third canto of Bhagavatam, in the pastime of Devadama. That pastime is very illuminating, because when Devahuti married Kardama, Kardama was a great saint, and he had personally seen the Lord, and he was ready, practically speaking, to step off into transcendence. Devahuti entered the marriage desiring spiritual life as well, but she also desired materialness a little bit. She wanted to experience life with her husband, which is perfectly natural. So when she served her husband, and the 23rd chapter of the third canto describes this, she served her husband completely. But at some stage, while she was serving her husband turned to her and said, "You have sacrificed so much. Now, as a reward, please, all the gifts that I have to give, what is rarely attained in terms of the Lord and entrance into this world, please take this realization." Devahuti said, "Thank you, but at the time of our marriage, you promised the son. I would desire that you please fulfill that particular promise." And then Kardama, he looked at that, he turned back to me and said, Hare Krishna. Sorry, I think I dropped out there again for a second. So Kardama looked at the hut and looked at Devahuti and said, "Whatever you want to do, we can just do it there." And Devahuti said, "No. She actually didn't quite express it that way, but her face just looked a bit. She just made an expression that was not what she wanted, and she just kind of looked away a little bit. And Kardama understood that she wanted to actually experience life with him. Devahuti then looked at herself, and her thought was, "Look at my state, because I've not, maintained my hair. It's all completely tangled up and it's a mess. My skin is completely discolored, and my body is not fit to really experience this situation with my husband. He will not be attracted to me any longer." I understood that too. So by virtue, this particular mystic power, he arranged for Devahuti to be completely decorated and revived to her original beauty. He then created an airplane from his mind and took Devahuti to the choicest places of enjoyment in the universe, places reserved for the highest of the demigods. And they enjoyed in this way for 100 celestial years. But after they returned back, of course, they had several children, 9 daughters, in fact. Kardama was about to leave home. He had told his wife and his father-in-law, Manu, at the time of marriage, that after Devahuti conceived, he would take sannyas and leave. So now he was prepared to leave after spending 100 celestial years with Devahuti. And Devahuti was very distressed because she loved her husband. She was very attached. But she came to the door, and Bhagavatam describes that her toenail, which was reflecting light. It was that beautiful and that effulgent. She was scratching the ground with just her toenail. And in a state of distress, she told her husband, "My dear husband, you are leaving now, and I'm not going to stop you. But I will say this, that I, as an individual, have seen you as only my husband, forgetting how great a personality you are spiritually, and how much benefit you can offer me personally from a spiritual perspective. Seeing you as a husband, I've just loved you in that way, and I beg that now you are leaving, and I, who have just experienced the whole gamut of material enjoyment, I have now realized that all of these experiences do not necessarily make me happy. More precisely, having experienced all of those things with you, I feel like I am over them. I am materially exhausted. Now I want something from you. I want an opportunity. I want some arrangement by which I can go deeper into my own spiritual life and attain the lotus feet of the Lord." Kardama asked her, "Are you saying this just because you want me to stay?" And Devati said, "No, I am genuinely materially exhausted. All the experiences that I've had, it's not that it's been bad and therefore I'm exhausted. It is just that the way I'm engaged in it has been so completely wonderful, not just from a material satisfaction perspective, but we've engaged in it according to the principles that the Lord has laid down. And engaging in those principles and engaging in those experiences that way has enabled me to completely experience married life with you, but has also helped me transcend that desire for married life simultaneously. And it has allowed me to come to the platform understanding that I, as a spirit soul, don't need these things to be happy. I don't need to go to those pleasure gardens. I don't need to have children. I don't need to have opulence and wealth to become wealthy. My actual wealth lies in the qualities of my spirit soul. And I want to taste that particular happiness. So please kindly make that arrangement for me." Kardama then stayed. Kardama and Devati then had a son, Kapila. And when Kapila was born, Kardama took Kapila Dev aside and asked him, "Will my wife be okay? Will you take care of her?" Kapila said, "My dear Kardama, I will take care of my mother. You don't have to worry. You can go." So Kardama left. But this experience of Devahuti, after going through life in a specific way with Kardama, she had transcended the need to experience material. And that is the process actually mentioned in the first 6 chapters of the Bhagavad Gita. It is technically called Nishkama Karma Yoga, but it is a way by which one engages in material life in such a way that at the end of it, one feels Hare Krishna. So, so one feels whatever I had to experience, I've experienced. I don't need that anymore. But I have understood through those experiences that what the things that I was craving are not actually the things that can make me happy. What actually will make me happy are the qualities of that are deep within, qualities that are more in the line of duty, commitment, tolerance, forgiveness, these qualities in the mode of goodness that lead one to deeply be rooted in one's eternal existence. Because until and unless one is deeply rooted in one's eternal existence, the situations of life are inevitably going to cause happiness and distress. They're going to take us on up like an up waves and down waves, and that is a situation that will always be present throughout our life. But when one experiences, through the ups and downs of marriage, what has really ultimately made me happy is sticking to duty and commitment, learning these qualities of forgiveness and tolerance, deeply rooted in my nature as a spirit soul. And one goes through life with those qualities. Then at the end, having experienced all of those components of life, not just becoming totally frustrated or leaving dissatisfied, one is completely satisfied and able to understand, I actually don't need those things for my happiness. I need something that's within my own self, the qualities that belong to me naturally. That is the first 6 chapters of the Bhagavad Gita. In the middle 6 chapters of the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna makes things a lot more direct and a lot more personally connected to him. Because in the first 6 chapters of the Gita, the focus is on the individual himself. You will note, if you've looked at the verses describing the position of the spirit soul carefully, from 2.12 to 2.30, where Krishna describes the spirit soul, there's not a single verse where Krishna describes the spirit soul as being a part and parcel of Krishna. That understanding is not given in the first 6 chapters of the Bhagavad Gita. There, in the first 6 chapters, Krishna speaks of the spirit soul as being completely separate from matter. And the end result, therefore, is naturally that you think, if I'm completely separate from matter, what am I doing with matter? Should I not be trying to leave it or escape it? So the goal of the first 6 chapters in that sense is liberation, awakening the full beauty and the qualities of the spirit soul. And the process, of course, is principally Nishkam Karma Yoga, which culminates in the process of either Jnana or Ashtanga Yoga, which enables one to focus intensely and awaken the qualities of the spirit soul. That is the focus of the first 6 chapters. In the middle 6 chapters, however, Krishna takes things to the level of direct bhakti, not bhakti that is connected to dealing with the world. In the first 6 chapters, an individual would go to work and offer that to Krishna. In the first 6 chapters, an individual would experience family life in some way that is connected to Krishna. But in the middle 6 chapters, the focus is not on how you deal with the material world in such a way that you connect it to Krishna and then transcend it. Rather, the focus is directly building a relationship with Krishna. Therefore, we quoted Yamunacharya in the beginning of this presentation. Yamunacharya considers the first 6 chapters to be focused on karma yoga or jnana yoga, or you can call it Ashtanga yoga. But in either case, it is focused on devotees practically dealing with the world in such a way that they transcend those experiences. But in the middle 6 chapters, Krishna makes things far, far more direct and far, far more personal. He starts this, if you look at verses 7, 5, 7, 6, by saying that that this material energy that you're looking at, that I've previously described as being Maya, that I've described as being distinct from the spirit soul, it is my energy, O Krishna, O Arjuna. And in fact, you yourself are my personal energy. So this is 7.4, which is Bhumi Rapo Nalo Vayu, and 7.5, which is Aparayam Itastvanyam. You are Jiva Bhuta Mahabaho. You are Aparayam Itastvanyam Prakritam Vidhi Me Param. You are my Prakriti. You are my superior Prakriti, endowed with consciousness. And you are the Jiva. You are separate from Maya. That is true. But more importantly, you are connected to me. And the middle 6 chapters, now this is, I'm going to express this in a connected way. It is a flowing conversation from the beginning of the 7th chapter, really, to where Krishna really wants to take the whole discussion, is to the Chatur Shloki in the 10th chapter, which is verses 8 through to 11. Now, that is actually one conversation. It is broken in between by Arjuna's specific questions. Like, for example, at the end, the beginning of the 8th chapter, Arjuna asks a question. And Krishna addresses that question through the 8th chapter, but returns to the topic at the beginning of the 9th chapter. And then he goes back, he emphasizes, he brings the topic to a conclusion in the beginning of the 10th chapter, leading up to the Chaturshloki in 10:11. The rest of the 10th chapter is Arjuna's question. The 11th chapter is predicated on Arjuna's desire to see Krishna's universal form. And the 12th chapter is also focused on another one of Arjuna's questions, comparing the process of the first 6 and the middle 6 chapters. But the heart of the middle 6 chapters really is from 7:1, or really 6:47, where Krishna indicates that I'm going to speak about pure bhakti. I'm going to speak about that process which gives you a direct personal relationship with me, not just awakens your spiritual identity and shows that you are separate from matter, but awakens your relationship with me and brings you to the status of my eternal associate. Krishna is ready to speak about that process. And it's a conversation that continues from 647/7:1 up to 10:11. Now, I want to highlight certain phrases across those verses that help understand what that idea is. Krishna begins to say in 7:1, he says, "Hear, O Arjuna, tat shrunu," an understanding that I want to of myself that I want to give you, that will help you understand me completely. Asamshayam samagram mam. You will understand me without any doubt. You will understand me completely. And in this, this knowledge of me is awakened. How? Mai asakta manapartha yogam yunjan madashraya. With mind attached to me, when you engage in my devotional service, you will come to know me completely. Know me, you will automatically know yourself as a direct consequence. Just as when one is looking in a mirror, the sun comes up, one sees oneself directly in the mirror. When the sun of Krishna arises in one's heart, one is able to see one's nature, not just as a spirit soul, but completely as a servant of Krishna in Krishna's eternal pastimes. Krishna is saying, I'm going to share with you that understanding by which you will practice bhakti yoga in full consciousness of me, with mind attached to me, and you will come to realize me fully. But in order for you to begin this practice, there are 2 aspects of knowledge that you need to have. And this is stated in 7.2. Krishna says, Jnanam teham savijnanam idam vakshyami asheshatah yaj jnatva neha bhuyaj jnatavyam avashishyate. He says there are 2 types of knowledge, jnanam and vijnanam. Jnanam here refers to knowledge of Krishna's connection with matter. And Vijnanam, which is in the 9th chapter, refers to Krishna being completely, his Swarupa, being completely separate from matter. He says, knowing these 2 things will enable you to practice pure bhakti and completely surrender to me. Let us discuss how this is actually to happen. So Jnanam is discussed from 7:8 through to 7:12. And the understanding that Krishna provides here is this. He says, understand that taste of water, the light of the moon. I am the syllable Om in the Vedic mantras, the strength of man, the intelligence, etc. of the intelligent. But the idea that Krishna is presenting here is to say, whatever you find of potency in this world, know that that potency comes from me. It is very common today when people are looking at individuals who are very strong, very intelligent, for people to appreciate that person's intelligence and strength. Or if people are in a particular experience, just imagine that, the devotees are playing cricket. There's a particular rasa, there's a competition that exists there. What Krishna is saying is, if you appreciate that competition, if you appreciate, how good a person is in that game, know that ability, that strength comes from me. So what you're actually indirectly appreciating is me. But if somebody actually knows that the reason I'm attracted to this game is this experience that I'm acquiring here, the particular people whose qualities I value, or to the experience of competitiveness or camaraderie. That very experience actually comes from Krishna directly, and it can be directly experienced in a relationship with Krishna. If if I'm lying on my bed at nighttime and I'm feeling the comfort of my bed, if I'm able to understand that the comfort of my bed, it actually comes from Krishna, then I won't be the bed that I'm resting on, or that time where I'm resting on the bed, as being separate from Krishna. One feels dependent upon Krishna even in that time. And the more one begins to see everything in one's life as being connected to Krishna and as being an aspect of Krishna's potency, then one will actually feel, why am I taking shelter of all of these things? Everything that I want or could have, it actually comes from Krishna. So let me take shelter of Krishna. In fact, in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, Adi Lila 1, Prabhupada writes that a spiritual master is defined as one who teaches the disciple the 7th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. He says that a spiritual master who enables a disciple to understand Krishna's presence in everything around us. That spiritual master allows a disciple to walk through the doorway of surrender, walk the path of Sharanagati, because the devotee understands, I don't need so many other things in my life. Everything that I'm trying to experience, it comes from Krishna. So now let me take shelter of Krishna directly. Now in the 9th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, Vijnana is described. Now Vijnana, there are a series of verses from 9:4 through to 9:10 where Krishna says, just see, Arjuna, how everything is in me and I'm in everything, yet everything is not in me and I'm not in everything. Behold my mystic opulence. What Krishna is here saying is that yes, everything is resting in me, but that doesn't mean that that is my only job or responsibility. Rather, it's an expansion of myself with just a fragment with a fragment expansion's potency. All of this is being sustained. But I myself, it's not in me because I am in Goloka Vrindavan. I am in this world with my associates. That's where I am. That's where I am completely relishing their association and my pastimes there. And I'm not in them, I'm there, and they're not in me. They're resting on my amsha and I am there. The idea being that for a devotee who is surrendered, to know that there is a relationship with Krishna well beyond dealing with the material world, a relationship with Krishna founded on devotional principles such as chanting his names, hearing his pastimes that have got nothing to do with anything in the material world. Understanding that point is the purpose of Vijnana in the 9th chapter. It helps us understand that I don't have to use the material world to serve Krishna. Chanting his names, Krishna says, I'm not part of this material world. I'm in this world, but I'm not in this material world. Because Krishna's names, form, qualities, and pastimes have got nothing to do with the material world. Even though he's in everything and sustaining everything, his personality, his swarupa is completely separate. And so, O Arjuna, O devotees, please chant my names. Please just offer one morsel of foodstuff to me. Offer flower, leaf, water, something to me out of love and devotion. It is that offering that builds a direct relationship with me, separate from any duties you may consider you have in the material world, that will actually bring you to the position of being my associate. And in the 10th chapter, Krishna says, this, I'm going to express to you knowledge more confidential than what I've even expressed before. This knowledge is described, and the reason this knowledge is more confidential is because Krishna is bringing all of these ideas together to express how one acquires pure bhakti. And this is 10.7, and please note this verse. So in 7.2, Krishna had said, Jnanam teham savijnanam idam bhakshyami asheshataha. I'm going to teach you Jnanam and Vijnanam. In 10.7, he says, Etam vibhutim yogam cha. So the vibhutim refers to the jnana. Vibhutim, my potencies, my opulences which are spread everywhere in this world and which sustain everything in this world. Etam vibhutim, and yogam here refers to Krishna's qualities which are completely above the material world. The fact that he's not touched by it, he's impartial, but his entire personality, his swarupa, is completely separate from the material world. Etam vibhutim yogam cha. One who understands the jnanam expressed in the 7th chapter, and yogam, the vijnanam expressed in the 9th chapter, mama yo veti tattva, understands these two principles in truth. Saha, that person, avikalpena yogena, avikalpena, without distraction, without anything else coming in between, yogena, with unalloyed devotional service, yujyate, he engages in, natrasa, without any doubt whatsoever. And this is the seed verse that then wrote the Chaturshloki. In the first verse of the Chaturshloki, 10.8, Krishna says that everything comes from me and everything operates because of me. So on this point, so this is another way of expressing jnanam and vijnanam, because Krishna is saying, no, that everything operates because of me and everything comes from me. It's not, yet I'm still separate. But knowing this, that I am the cause of everything in this world, yet I'm separate. Knowing this, the wise who understand this, buddha bhava samanvitaha, with great attention and devotion, they worship me. And how do they worship me? 10.9, Krishna says, they come together and they hear and chant about me with as much relish, Prabhupada writes in the purport, as a man likes to experience the glance, particularly the sidelong glance of a beautiful young girl. With that much relish, tushyananticha, they hear and chant about me. And what is the result? That I give them the intelligence by which they're able to navigate through life. So that becomes peripheral. You don't have to have a specific process by which you deal with life, like Nishkama Karma Yoga. Krishna gives us the intelligence to help us navigate through life in such a way that there are no obstacles in coming through to Him, that we take the right decisions at the right times so that we can come to Him. And any impurity that remains within the heart, 10.11, Krishna says, I remove it myself. And so this message of direct bhakti expressed in the middle 6 chapters is actually the heart of the Bhagavad Gita. And acharyas often describe that just as the most important thing is usually hidden in the middle, this message expressed across chapters 7 through to 10 is expressed right in the middle of the conversation. In 13 through to 18, the last 6 chapters, Krishna tells us how to practically deal with the material world for both kinds of practitioners of the first 6 chapters and the chapters. Those who are focused more on dealing with the material world to try and awaken their spiritual personality, or those who now are mature enough to focus on their direct relationship with Krishna. For people of either levels of consciousness, the Lord gives instructions from 13 to 15 to help us more deeply understand our position in the material world, to understand the different elements like the intelligence, the mind, the chitta, etc., that govern our presence in this world, and how we can deal with these things so that we can come closer to Krishna. But in the end, and this is the point that I wanted to end with here, in the verse, in leading up to the verse that is 1865 and 1866, just in 1863, Krishna had told Arjuna, I've told you everything I need to tell you. I've told you how you can operate properly in the material world so you can, actually transcend those experiences. And I've told you how to build a relationship with me. And I've given you tools in the chapters from 13 through to 17. In fact, most of 18 also, in terms of how to actually practically apply both principles. Now you decide and you tell me what you want to do. And at that point, our acharyas describe Arjuna then he becomes very thoughtful and he begins to think very deeply about the message of the Gita. And Krishna, seeing his dear friend in that deep mood of contemplation, trying to understand what he should do and at what level he should operate, and how he should proceed forward, Krishna's heart melts with compassion, and he says in 64, "Oh Arjuna, because you are my very dear friend, don't worry your mind anymore. You are my very dear friend. I'm giving you my supreme secret spoken to you already in chapters 9 and 10. You don't need to think about everything else, because I'm telling you what is the most important thing. Hear this from me. Engage in my pure devotional service, composed of hearing and chanting about me. Offer obeisances to me, become my devotee, and I promise you, you will come to me, because you are my very dear friend." But oh Arjuna, this is not just something you can't just hear and chant and just that's okay. Rather, the process of achieving me is the process of hearing and chanting and completely taking shelter of me, following the path of Sharanagati, living your life on my terms, according to my instructions. Even if you're chanting as I want you to chant. If you're offering something to me as the deities, offering as I want you to offer it to me. Living life on my terms. If you're able to surrender to that level, then the hearing and chanting that you do will actually come to the stage of pure bhakti. So 1866 says, completely giving up every other conception of what you want to do or how you want to do things, even of how you want to practice bhakti. Living life on my terms, doing things as I want you to do them, or for us, doing things as our spiritual master or our superiors ask us to do them. Offering it first for their pleasure, our entire life, from waking up in the morning to when we sleep at night and everything in between. Filling our life with hearing and chanting about Krishna, no matter where we are and what we are doing. That is the pathway to achieving the Lord. And Krishna says, you may think that what you have will produce some sinful effect, or it may produce some obstacles. If you're in family life, you may think that this family life may be an obstacle. If you think you're a renunciate, you may think that there may be some difficulty. Aham tvam sarva papebhyo. All sins and all obstacles I will personally remove. You don't have to worry about it one bit. You just live life on my terms, and wherever you are, whatever you are doing, you just fill your life by hearing and chanting my name and my glories and hearing my pastimes in the association of my devotees. That, I promise you, is sufficient. You don't need anything else. And therefore, O Arjuna, this is my supreme instruction. And if you practice this, there's nothing else for you to know or for you to do. And that is the conclusion of the Bhagavad Gita. It takes a person who is just struggling to deal with life, as Arjuna was in the very beginning of chapter 1, who has these qualities of self-reflection, who's having a little faith and is willing to accept a solution other than just what they're thinking themselves. It takes a person of that level, shows them first how they can practically deal with the material world so as to awaken their real identity, but then takes them to the level in the middle 6 chapters of understanding what a direct relationship with Krishna looks like, to the last 6 chapters, giving them the tools by which to understand the different experiences they have in the world, to progress on the path they choose towards Krishna, but ultimately giving somebody 2 things: an understanding that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and 2, among all kinds of processes, bhakti is superlative, more than dealing with the material world and offering it to Krishna, more than just practicing certain austerities because we think it is going to help purify our heart, but just focusing on hearing and chanting about Krishna on Krishna's terms. And doing that, understanding what pure bhakti is and understanding how we can practice it, what it actually means and constitutes. These are the 2 central messages of the Gita. Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and pure bhakti is the highest of all processes. And on this day of Gita Jayanti, to remember and revive this message of what Krishna is saying and what Krishna has offered us through this book is a great blessing. Because honestly, one can go through the entirety of the Upanishads, and I've had in certain of my studies, I have gone through a few sections of the Upanishads. It is practically impossible to acquire and extract this message, because this message is the essence of the Upanishads. Shankaracharya has said, Sarva Upanishado Ghavo Dhogda Gopal Nandana Parto Vatsa Sudhir Bhoksha Suridam Gitamritam Mahat. He says that just as a milkman milks a cow and extracts the essence of the cow, its milk, which is not only available for the calf but available for the whole world, similarly, Krishna has extracted the essence of the Upanishads, which are compared to the cow. He has taken its essence in the form of milk, fed it to Arjuna, who is the calf, but the rest of the milk, which is not drunk by Arjuna, or more precisely, after Arjuna has heard the message is now available for the whole world. And this Bhagavad Gita carries with it insights for practitioners of every different level. Even if one doesn't read the Upanishads, if one doesn't get to read any other scripture at all, even if for that matter, one struggles to understand Srimad Bhagavatam or Chaitanya Charitamrita, if one deeply, deeply understands the 700 verses of the Bhagavad Gita, even if one makes this one book the principal topic of one study, it is a fact that every single concept of the Srimad Bhagavatam completely opens out. There is nothing in the Srimad Bhagavatam from a conceptual or framework point of view that is not presented in the Bhagavad Gita. Of course, the Bhagavad Gita is extremely condensed. It is every verse has a lot of explanation, a lot of detail, and devotees who take the time to research and study deeply each of the verses, sections, and concepts and connections between the Bhagavad Gita. The devotees who take the time to do that prepare themselves in the best way possible to understand Srimad Bhagavatam completely, or for that matter, the revelations in Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, which are an explanation of and an elaboration of the fundamental concepts in the Bhagavad Gita. Sometimes the Bhagavad Gita is seen as an opening book for the devotees. Honestly, it is almost like a condensed version of every other scripture that we can read. And in this condensed form, a devotee can experience the highest levels of ecstasy of Prema Bhakti simply by reading these verses. We can say more. There's so much more to say. However, we will stop here. And I would like to thank all the Vaishnavas for participating and joining in this discussion on this most auspicious day of Gita Jayanti. And I would also like to apologize for the various outages that have taken place in between that have interrupted this presentation. But Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavad Gita ki Jai, Srila Prabhupada ki Jai, Jai Nitai Gaur Premanande, Vanchakal Patarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhyevacha, Patitanam Bhavanebhyo, Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha.